At our campaign kickoff in Philadelphia, I spoke about the first words of the United States Constitution. We, the people. Not you, not me, not we, the Democrats, or we, the Republicans. We, the people. It's a statement of common purpose, of one people, one nation, one America. I don't think even those who wrote those words could have predicted their power over the next 200 plus years. They created the strongest and most resilient nation in the history of the world, overcoming a Great Depression, 2 world wars, 9/11. Now we're facing an unseen enemy, unlike any we've experienced in our lifetime. And it's threatening our health, our economy, and our way of life. But every day, millions of courageous people across this nation have heeded the call. One by one, they brought us closer to reopening our society and our economy. And once again, we're seeing the power in the simple notion of we the people. 1 year ago today, I announced I was running for President of the United States of America. I said at the time, we were in the battle for the soul of the nation. Now, 1 year later, we're seeing the soul of the nation. There is no quitting America. There never has been, and there never will be. You know, as hard as it is to believe, maybe something good can come out of this terrible crisis. Maybe this crisis will help us see how much our broken politics has cost us. The anger, the insults, the divisiveness. And maybe it will help us see the power of what we can get done together. We can and we will rebuild our nation. We can and we will protect our nation from future pandemics. We can and we will emerge from this stronger, better, and a fair nation. I've always believed we've been at our best when we've acted as one America. This crisis is an opportunity for us to be that nation again, to be the United States of America. We just need to remember, there's nothing we cannot do if we do it together.
Together, we will flip Florida blue and make Joe Biden the next president of the United States. Good evening, everyone. My name is Chris Wills, coming to you from beautiful South Florida during a really difficult time for our country, a difficult time for our state and our local communities. But tonight, this Soul of the Nation Saturday, we are going to come together with Floridians all over our state. And we invite you to click the share button, invite you to encourage others to join us on this momentous occasion, the 1 year anniversary since Joe Biden launched his campaign and told us then that he would be victorious in this battle for the soul of America. And we're seeing so many examples of that, especially in the midst of this pandemic. As we begin our conversation tonight, I want to welcome to our conversation our very first participants. We're going to be traveling all over the state, from South Florida all the way up to North Florida. And then at 7 p.m. tonight, we'll have a very special presentation from Joe Biden himself on this 1 year anniversary of his campaign. From 7 p.m., you'll be able to, on this very live stream, watch that event. Now, I want to bring on screen the very first person who came to Joe Biden's side before he even launched his campaign, picking up all the endorsements that we got. I think more endorsements than any other state was able to bring together for the vice president upon his launching his campaign. And the man who helped make that possible is Representative Joe Geller from South Florida. Representative Geller, how are you?
Hello, how are you, Chris?
Thank you so much for joining us tonight on this really, really important evening. And I wanted to start off with you because you started this campaign really here in the state of Florida, giving Joe Biden that big boost that he needed even before a year ago, because you racked up those endorsements. So your opening words to everybody who's viewing us all over the state, and especially in light of what we're seeing with these real heroes in communities all over Florida, all over the country, that are proving what is the soul of the nation. What are you seeing out there, Representative Geller?
Well, thank you for helping to organize this, Chris. And thanks to everybody who's tuning in tonight. You know, we just heard from former Vice President Biden in a typical inspiring fashion. I'm somebody who's very moved by what he has had to say since the first day of this campaign. When Joe Biden says that he's fighting for the soul of this country and to restore that soul, he means it. The message from Joe Biden is not just we can do things better. It's not just about competence. It's not just about vision. It's not just about how we move to the future. The most important message from him is when he talks about the unity of this country. He's appealing to every single American. Everyone who wants to see this be one united states, as he just said, of America, where the people are united, work together, and work towards a common future. Now, this challenge we're in now, this awful crisis that we're all suffering through, it's a terrible thing. People are dying, and sadly, it looks like more people will. But there are heroes, as you say, out there every day. Not just first responders, not just our police and our fire and paramedics, but healthcare professionals and frankly, a lot of other people that aren't as easily seen. People who are driving trucks to deliver food. People who are working in restaurants and supermarkets to make sure that there is food on the shelves when you go there. People that are working in our post office to make sure that mail still gets through and that we'll all be able to cast a vote that counts, whether by mail or otherwise, come this fall. So there are heroes plenty in this country. To me, Joe Biden is one of them to me, because he's fighting to unite our country, to heal divisions, to bring this country back together so that we can all move forward towards a greater future for not just our country, but for all the people who live in it.
Indeed. And we also have Representative Shevrin Jones joining us right now. Representative Jones represents an area of Broward. Representative Jones, how are you this evening as we celebrate this anniversary, or at least commemorate it in spite of the pandemic? Your thoughts tonight as we begin this celebration and commemoration.
Hi, Chev.
Hey, how you doing, Uncle Joe? Good to see you. It's definitely good to thank you, Chris, and thank you, I call him Uncle Joe, but Representative Geller for being here. The great opportunity to be here to represent and to support Vice President Joe Biden. In February, I had the opportunity to travel to Iowa to caucus for Vice President Joe Biden, along with Representative Malcolm Kenyatta and Senator Akbari from both from up north. And let me tell you something. There was no greater pleasure that I had to go to Iowa to be able to support someone who I truly believe in. It's true that voters across the country are looking for strong leadership. And not only just strong leadership, they're looking for stable and compassionate leadership, and continuing to see that in the type of leadership that we need within the White House. We're not seeing that right now in a time where we need all of the above, in which I just said. We don't need a president that's going to lash out at governors who need support from the White House. We don't need support from an individual who's going to lash out at our healthcare workers and say that they're stealing supplies from our hospitals. We don't need a leader right now who's going to make statements across the country to tell individuals to take disinfectants as a cure to coronavirus. We need a leader who's going to lead. We need a leader who's going to connect with leaders all across this country to figure out what is the best way that we can cure this virus, not independently of the United States of America, but what can we conclude as a country as a whole? I felt some kind of way today looking at the president, France prime minister today, as they were meeting, looking at how could the world leaders work together to come together to find a cure for coronavirus, and the United States is not at the table to look at that. I mean, how does that look as one of the richest, the richest country in our in the world? The fact that we're outside of the table trying to look for a cure for this thing we call coronavirus. That's not what leaders do. A leader is not the one who sit outside of it. He or she is one who put themselves in the fire to make sure that they are part of that conversation. And for those reasons, because I know Joe, and because I know what he has done, is why I'm supporting him. Is why I take time out of my Saturday to be on a call to be able to support him. And I'm happy to be here today, and I'll be here until November, until we get to a victory party to see that Joe Biden is the next president of the United States.
Chris, not to take your duties away, but my friend Shevrin, you just recently hosted a live town hall with Vice President Biden. Can you tell us about what that was about, what you went over, and how that went?
Hey, really quick, I'll say it very quickly. I had the opportunity to host a town hall with Vice President Joe Biden and some of the frontline workers across the country to show how important they are to this time right now here in the United States. The best experience of my life. Again, that goes to speak to the heart of who Joe Biden is. Thank you, Uncle Joe.
And just to follow that, Shevrin, what did they have to say, the people on that live town hall? Not just the vice president, but the other heroes that you were interviewing.
Yeah, absolutely, I appreciate that. The other heroes, their main thing that they said is that they're looking for someone who's going to support them. They understand that they're essential workers, and they understand that they're on the front lines of this, and they don't feel any kind of way other than a part of bringing healing to this nation, and they want to feel appreciated. And they felt appreciated when Vice President Joe Biden spoke to them, and just to hear their concerns. But they also want to feel appreciated after coronavirus is done. And so Vice President Biden committed to them that he will continue to work on their behalf because he knows what it feels like, because he was raised in that type of family. So it was an amazing experience.
And you did a great job moderating that forum. We put up a little picture of you and the vice president.
Chris, I'm not hearing you.
So that was great to have you do that, and it was a very good conversation that needs to be had about the people that are being most affected by this.
Chris, I'm not hearing you for some reason.
Representative Jones, can you hear me? Okay.
I hear you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so perhaps. I'm not sure what's going on with Representative Geller.
Chev, what is Chris saying? I can't hear him.
Chris is saying that he can hear me, but he can't hear you.
So everybody that's watching, this is the new reality that we're on. We're working on.
How about now?
Yes, hopefully you can hear me. You can hear me better now.
Still? Can you still hear me, Chris?
Technical glitches. We can hear you just fine. We'll reset Representative Geller so that he can.
And Chev, you can hear me?
Hopefully. So hopefully we can get him back on real soon. But Representative Jones, right here in South Florida, we have a situation where some of our first responders actually have been reporting not getting the PPE that they need. There was a news story out of Kendall Regional Hospital where some of the frontline workers are really concerned about their own safety. And we're seeing some amazing moments with these first responders, nurses, and doctors who are making sure that they take a moment of prayer and they take a moment to collect their thoughts, because the challenges that they're facing on a daily basis are just really, 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 really big. It's just something that, while they're all very well trained, it's not anything they've really been prepared for. And Jackson Health System shared this image. They tweeted this where they said, this is how we started our morning today. Our team said a prayer asking God for guidance and protection while we're at work and to keep us and our family safe. And this is what we're seeing from our frontliners, that are, again, putting their lives at risk every single day. What are you seeing in the Broward area? And how can those that are viewing all over the state and all over the country, how do you think we can help better support all these people on the front lines?
Staying home.
Agreed.
Let's start there. I think that it is so important that we respect our frontline workers to the extent to where we follow the rules in which has been asked of us, and that is to stay home. That's one. But the second thing that is important that we realize is that that we as a community, as much as we can, we have to make sure that we're doing our part to make sure that we help those who need us most. For those who have the ability to do so, you have organizations like Feeding South Florida and other organizations that are looking for assistance and help in the efforts in what they're doing to feed families. And they're looking for donations and help. And the most we can do is help these entities to get through this pandemic together, because we're going on week 7 to where families are about not to receive a paycheck. May 1st is coming around and rent will be due again. How forgiving will landlords be as we continue to come up? So it's just important that we as a body and as a community, that we work together to make that happen. And I'll end with this. To see that picture of the frontline workers, those nurses praying, as a Christian myself, prayer is universal. And I think that any person who is, may they be in the hospital or out of the hospital, I'm sure they appreciate those individuals down on their knees, because that is the posture of surrenderance, and knowing that, it is important that before we go in to do anything and touch anybody, that we first create this solemn assembly amongst ourselves to make sure we do our job to save a life. And it's nothing more than amazing to see that, which you just.
Well, and for this moment, it's more clear than ever that we need leadership from somebody like Joe Biden. And you both have had the opportunity.
Chris, I want to add something if you can hear me. I certainly can still hear Chev. There's some other essential workers that we may not be focusing on as much. And I want to talk for a minute about our postal workers. The post office is under attack by the president. I guess he's afraid that the Postal Service will do its job and it'll deliver the millions of vote-by-mail ballots that it's going to take to help vote this guy out of office and put this country back on the path of sanity and good government and leadership. And we need to all defend not just the post office itself. We need to defend these postal workers. There are a couple of postal worker unions. The president's trying to squash those unions, just like he's trying to squash public employee unions across this country. The Republicans say the state should declare bankruptcy so that we can avoid the pensions that have been earned by risking life and limb on the part of our first responders. It's shocking how wrong that is.
For sure. And
we need to defend these postal workers and the postal worker unions. We're going to be urging people for their own safety and the security of the election to vote by mail by the millions. So first, we need to be sure that these postal workers are safe. We need to be sure that they have personal protective equipment, just like healthcare workers do, because if that coronavirus gets into our postal unions, our system's going to crash and burn. And while we're on the topic of vote by mail, I just want to tell everyone, we're going to have a campaign to do that. We're going to also fight to make sure people can vote in other ways if that's what they want to do. But if you're even thinking you might vote by mail, update your signature now. Do it now. Don't wait. Get the form. When you're requesting a vote by mail ballot, send in a signature update. We're going to be asking that can be done electronically, but for right now, what you have to do is just fill out the form, sign your updated signature to it. Some people haven't updated in 10, 20, 30 years. Get the signature updates in so that you can be sure your vote will be counted, because our so-called cure period after Election Day, where signature differs, is 47 hours. And if we have a lot of them, that's going to be too steep a mountain to climb. Update your signature, request your vote by mail ballot, support your postal workers and the postal worker unions.
Yeah.
The letter carriers and the APWU.
Absolutely. We need to make sure that we're telling all of our elected officials from the local, state, federal level, automatic vote by mail, at least here in Florida. And we can urge our supervisors of elections to do that at the local level. And what does that result in? If we get...
Chev, I'm going to need you to translate, because I just cannot hear Chris.
A huge amount of people actually vote by mail. We win this election. And we have 2 representatives on the line with us right now that have personally met and worked with Vice President Biden, know how important it is that we make sure that we elect him, that he's the right man for the job. We have right now Representative Bill Geller. You know, he actually sent us a great GIF of him and Joe Biden. You know, that's a great moment where he had the opportunity.
What is Chris saying?
And we also had...
I see the video.
Shevrin Jones. We were talking a little bit ago about how you actually went up to some of the early states and campaigned for the vice president. What was that like? What was that experience like?
I'll be honest with you. Going to Iowa was amazing. To travel with Secretary John Kerry John Kerry is a walking history book, and to travel with him across Iowa to caucus for Vice President Biden in February, it was freezing cold. I'll be very honest with you, but the experience was amazing because we only had 24 hours to study our talking points for Vice President Biden, and we were on stage. I did not expect that we were going to be speaking in the capacity that we were speaking in, but the experience was amazing. And let me tell you something: it's hard to me to speak on behalf of someone I don't believe in, but being able to speak for Vice President Biden and share my experience, the Joe I know from when he served as the vice president under President Barack Obama, even to the who he was as a senator. And I know there are many individuals who have their hangups and their hookups of what Vice President Biden is and who he was. Even as an elected official, I can tell you that as we grow within this process, growing in this process is about speaking to people, understanding people's concerns, knowing the direction that we need to go in, and we're moving in as a country, as a nation, as a state, as a city. And and that's what I've learned. I learned while caucusing for Vice President Biden. And I'll end with this: for those individuals who are on the line on whether or not you think you need to get on board with Joe Biden, all I want you to do is watch what we're dealing with now and ask yourself the question: who is better qualified to deal with what we're dealing with at hand when it comes to this country? The people need Joe Biden to run this country, and it's literally the soul of the nation that's at hand.
You're 100% right. And I want to bring on the screen a young man who also has had the opportunity to meet Vice President Biden. He's actually helping us in a tremendous way to connect people on social media using creative GIFs like the one that Representative Geller shared of him with Vice President Biden. And that's Mr. Robert Palacios, who's joining us in County.
Hey, how are you?
How are you? To meet the Vice President. And we've also got on the line Vincent Toronzo,
Hey,
who
Minister.
Hi, everyone. How are you?
organized a
Hello.
great forum with Fred Gutenberg and had some excellent questions.
Fantastic. Oh, that's great.
So I'd love to hear just real quick before I let both Representative Geller and Representative Jones go, because you were kind of hitting on that a little bit, Representative Jones, now. Your message to young voters and young supporters of Joe Biden, like Robert, like Vincent, and so many others, and what they should be doing to make sure that we elect Joe Biden as president of the United States.
Well, let me say this. You know, this campaign to restore the soul of this country is not about who was there first. It's about who's there at the end. And the reality is that this campaign, like no campaign I've ever seen, is open to everyone of goodwill that wants to put this country back on the path, not just to unity, but to working together to face our problems. I've never seen a campaign that's moved so strongly and so quickly to incorporate people who were supporters of another Democrat that was running in the primaries, and for that matter, that's reaching out as strongly to independents and to the Republicans of goodwill, and there are a surprising number of those. So wherever you are, whoever you were for, whatever it is that is your particular passion that you want to see this country move forward on, there sure are a lot of things that the vice president's talked strongly about that are well beyond just this existential crisis, whether it be climate change and other existential crises or healthcare, which is being spotlighted now. The message, particularly to young voters, is that this country can have a great future in front of it if we work together, if we heal our divisions, and if we just roll up our sleeves like Joe Biden and tackle these problems and move forward and don't hide from them and don't give happy talk about them. Face the reality, look at these problems, look them in the eye, and set about getting past them, finding solutions to them that work for all Americans. And I think that message of hope will resonate especially with younger voters.
And on my end, and Vincent, I don't have the pleasure of knowing who you are, but I do know Robert, and I know the work that Robert is doing in South Florida. Uncle Joe he said a mouthful that I totally agree with. I know, and Uncle Joe, you were so right on so many areas. To our young people, my advice would be is that you are not what's to come later. You are exactly what we need right now.
That's right.
We need you now. My nephew this will be the first time he's voting in November. And he is one who is watching what has happened as this country unfolds before our eyes. And he's looking for leadership. And he's looking at leadership. His name is Cyrus. And the leadership that he's seeing right now is not what he desires. Robert and Vincent, I am depending on you all to look at. I know I'm an older millennial, but and you are younger millennials, but I'm depending on you all. I'm looking to you all to make sure that the young people understand what is important, what we need to move this country forward. I've had the privilege to look at and follow some great leaders, from Senator Chris Smith all the way to Mayor Rick Kriseman, all the way to Senator Oscar Brandon, individuals who I've been able to watch as a young person to see what needs to happen, how leadership looks. And now we look at what we can have in the White House, and that's what we need. And I'll end with this. For those young people who are saying that we want Bernie and we're not voting because it's Bernie or bust, I'm gonna quote what Bernie Sanders said. If you say that type of rhetoric, it's irresponsible because of what we're dealing with right now. What we're dealing with right now is irresponsible. It's malpractice, and we can't deal with 4 more years of it. We have to get leadership in office that's going to move this country, because it is true that it is the soul of the nation that is at hand. And if we don't deal with it now, we'll deal with it later. And that's why we need Joe Biden as our next president of the United States. And I'm happy to support him 100%. Thank you so much, Chris, for having me.
Thank you all so much for joining us, and the audience loves you both. They've been posting positive comments about both of you.
I love you too, Daniela.
And you, Gloria. And let me say, remember the new Joe Biden bumper sticker. Biden, he won't inject you with bleach.
Very, very clever. And we have people that have been watching from all over the state, just so you know. We have a gentleman, Dave, who's watching from what he says the bluest county on the West Coast, Hillsborough.
Hey.
And we've had actually even some elected officials that have been sending in some comments saying hi to you all. So we really appreciate every. Sorry about that, guys. I clicked the wrong button. Again, we're working on new technology, but thank you both to Representative Geller and Representative Shevrin Jones for joining us at the beginning.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank
and I
you.
want to thank our two young voters on the screen, our two
Thank
young
you.
activists.
Thank you. I appreciate
You
it.
are the soul of this country.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. And
Bye-bye.
so we're going to turn to talk to those young voters right now before we move on to the southwestern part of the state. And I want to start with Robert Palacios because while Representative Geller definitely has the claim to fame to having been on board with Joe Biden very early on, gotten him a lot of these endorsements that have been so key. Robert, you basically created a social media presence for Joe Biden well before he even announced his campaign for president. Tell us a little bit about it, buddy.
First of all, thank you, Chris and Daniela, for the commitment and dedication you guys have provided to this group. You guys have the formation of this group. I've been supporting Joe Biden before he announced his candidacy because I've always believed that Joe Biden is the ideal candidate to meet the moment in history and defeat Donald Trump and make him a one-term POTUS. Joe Biden is a respectable statesman across party lines and in a global scale. He is the embodiment of what we need right now in the White House.
That you hit it on the nail. You hit it on the head, and you made a very, very bold statement there, man. Like the reality is, there's a lot of young people that are not willing to be as politically active as you are. They kind of, don't think it's important, and it's so awesome to see a young person like you from Miami-Dade County that has taken the initiative and has been organizing on social media. That's going to be so crucial and important to Joe Biden's victory. I just wanted to share real quick your picture with the vice president. You've had the opportunity to meet several of the elected officials throughout the course of this campaign, including Vice President Biden. What was that moment like for you, man, meeting the vice president at his very first event here in Miami-Dade?
No words can explain the way he spoke to me, and the way he told me something that really shocked me. He said that this generation of Americans can own this election by voting and coming out by big numbers. He knows that this generation is super important. We need you to go out and vote. We need Generation Z, millennials, and many others who are coming up before me to get engaged and get involved in politics. Super important.
Absolutely, man. And you guys are getting it done. You and Vince have been so important to this movement, to building what is Biden for FL, Biden for Florida, would not exist. The way we're going to flip this state blue in November would not be possible without the two of you. And Vince, what's going on in Broward County? You had this conversation with Fred Gutenberg just a short time ago. How do you see young people's reaction to Joe Biden and the fact that he's the presumptive nominee now?
Well, first of all, thank you, Chris, so much for having me on. It's an honor and a privilege. And it was certainly an honor to be on a live stream with Fred Gutenberg, along with other young voters in America. So the vice president, I've been with him since summer of 2019. I've been on his campaign. I'm on the Student Leadership Council. I'm now a co-chair for high school students for Biden. And, we've seen a change amongst what young people are looking at now at the Democratic candidates, because now there's only one person left, and that's Joe Biden. We've seen, this almost hate in this campaign, whether it comes from some Democrats or some Republicans. But we've seen the Democratic Party unite very fast within this past month. Bernie Sanders is now on Team Joe, and we're glad to have his support. And, you know, it's very important to say that the majority of young voters do support the vice president. They may have supported other candidates in the past, but they realize it's time to unite and go behind the vice president. We see this reaction on Twitter, on social media, that maybe Bernie supporters aren't supporting the vice president, but that's just not true. That's only about 10 to 5% of Bernie supporters.
Yeah.
So we've seen this change amongst young voters in the Democratic Party, that they do want the vice president to win against Donald Trump. Speaking with Fred Gutenberg in terms of gun violence, that is a very important topic in our country right now amongst young voters. A lot of young people are, especially high schoolers, are scared for their lives every time they go to school. And Robert, I'm sure, knows this. You know, we, especially here in South Florida, we're very scared to go to school because of what happened at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, who Fred Gutenberg lost his daughter, Jamie Gutenberg, at that school. So having that opportunity to speak to Fred Gutenberg, speak to other students across South Florida, speak to Democratic voters in South Florida when I go out and give a couple speeches at Democratic clubs, we see this change amongst people realizing that we need compassion, humility, and love in this country again, which is why they're supporting the vice president over Donald Trump.
Very, very well said. Everybody that's watching, if you have any doubt about the hope for the future of this country, you have no doubt after tonight, because you have young people like Vince, like Robert, and so many others that I've had the opportunity to meet over the past year of the Joe Biden campaign, that are young people that from the very beginning have been supporting the vice president, supporting his message of unity, and have been doing so in really creative ways. Like I said, Robert, if you're interacting with Joe Biden content on social media in Florida, it was probably created by Robert Palacios and shared. And every time that you like and share it, it helps Joe Biden get his message out there more. Because guess what? We're in the middle of a pandemic right now. It's very hard for us to be, nobody can be knocking on doors for sure, but it's even hard to make calls to voters because people are worried. People are scared about, maybe they have a loved one in the hospital, maybe they have lost their job. They don't know whether they're going to be able to put food on the table. And creative things like what Robert is doing and what Vince is doing to help Joe Biden's message get out there is very important. And I wanted to share something real quick before we wrap up with you two. Vince is very creative, very artsy, and he actually put together this chalking in his community where he basically used the Joe for Florida or Biden for Florida logo, and he put it up on sidewalks. So many of us have people in our communities that are tired of being inside. They're going to go take a walk outside, and there you are. There's Joe Biden's message. And I'm sure some of his neighbors saw a young person doing this, right? So young people coming up with creative things like that. Talk to that real quick about what you did with that creativity before we go, and how you can encourage other people to use their own creative minds to come up with, art like this, a song, whether it's, do stuff on social media like Robert's doing. What do you guys think your final message to everybody before we go?
Right. So I actually did this chalking in support of the vice president to show that while we're going through this pandemic, while we're going through this crisis, there's still ways that you can show your support for the vice president. Along the chalking that I have on the sidewalk, I also have 2 signs in my window showing out in the street, and people can always see those signs as they're driving by my house. And we've seen that amongst a lot of supporters across the country right now, especially Seoul Saturday, where supporters are putting signs on their windows, signs thanking EMT and medical first responders and as well as people writing letters to first responders. I just got off a Zoom call with Broward Voters for Joe, and they had created creative ways to show their support to EMT workers, especially while describing their support for Joe Biden. So someone actually made a goodie bag that had lifesavers, and on the message it said, "You are a lifesaver," and then the Joe Biden logo. So there have been people trying to find different ways to show their support, especially creatively. And it's very important that we continue to do so, to show that the vice president does have a lot of support, especially in Florida. They're saying that Florida might flip blue this election, and I wouldn't be surprised if it did. Texas might flip blue, South Carolina, North Carolina. We've seen a lot of states almost flipping blue in the 2020 election, according to polls. And back to what you said really quickly in terms of young people supporting the vice president. We've seen an increase in numbers of young people supporting the vice president compared to what happened in 2016. The party was much more divided in 2016 than it is now in 2020. Young people are supporting the vice president. Democrats are supporting the vice president. And I think we have a really, really strong chance in getting and building on that support with independent voters and voters that we lost in 2016. We can regain them back.
Thank you both so much for everything that you're doing. And a shout out from the audience. You have Pete saying that your chalking looked great. So congratulations to you. And again, keep an eye out on all the South Florida and all the state of Florida social media posts. Robert has a lot of work ahead between now and November 3rd.
You have done a lot of work on the many groups you created, which is really creative and awesome. In moments like this, it's a testament of the future in politics. I believe not only it's a horrible moment, of course, but I think it's going to be a future of politics, how everything's going to be run by digital media, which is
that's right. That's right. My fiance Daniela has said that we're literally making history. There's never been a campaign won in this fashion before, and it's because of the work that Robert, Vince, and so many others are doing that we are going to really set historic precedent as to how impactful this kind of thing can be on an election. Thank you both so much for everything you're doing, for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
And we'll connect again real soon.
Say hi to Daniela, please. Thank you.
Will do, buddy. Thank you.
Thank you.
And to your family. Thank you, guys. So we have spoken to our friends all over South Florida, and now we're going over, well, Southeast Florida specifically, and now we're going to go over to Southwest Florida from St. Pete all the way down to the Sarasota and Naples area, very important areas of our state where we know that Joe Biden is going to and can pick up a great deal of support. And I want to welcome to tonight's broadcast, Mayor Rick Kriseman. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. I know you've been waiting for a little bit. We had a lot to get through at the beginning of the program, but thank you so much for being patient with us and taking time to join us in the midst of this pandemic crisis. I know you have a lot going on in your city, and your leadership is the kind of leadership that so many across our state, so many across our country should be emulating. How are you feeling this Soul Saturday as we face this pandemic and we commemorate this 1-year anniversary of Joe Biden's campaign?
Well, first off, Chris, thank you for having me on today. This election is so important. I mean, I think this pandemic has really pulled the onion peels back on this presidency. I mean, all of us knew when he got elected what we were getting, but it's really exposed him for who he truly is, and how at risk our country is, and how important this election is to get the right man in the president's seat, and that is Joe Biden. And certainly, I think all of us and how we're dealing with this pandemic, it would have been so different if we had had a different leader at the helm as opposed to this guy. And so it really does serve as a reminder that elections matter. And if we all weren't motivated before this all started happening, good Lord, we certainly ought to be now.
You are absolutely right. More than ever, I think the decision in this election is just clear. If you are a logical, thoughtful voter, you are going to go into the voting booth on November 3rd and vote for Joe Biden, right? Literally, there is no reason that Donald Trump deserves not even one more day in the White House. Quite frankly, if we could hold the election today, I wish we could.
You and me both.
Yeah, because we've seen literally lives are at stake. Have you seen anything in particular that has caught your attention amongst the first responders, the frontline workers, that has really moved you as mayor of St. Petersburg, that, as Joe Biden talks about, has proven these are the people that are the soul of America. This is the soul of our country.
Yeah, and thank you for that question, because obviously our healthcare workers and our first responders, the job that they're doing right now is really quite amazing. They don't have the PPE that they need, and yet they come to work every day, knowing that that they're putting their life on the line every day that they come to work, and they're doing it because of their passion for the community and for the people they serve. But I want to talk about as mayor, a little different group of heroes that I think, they don't seek the limelight, they don't get the recognition they deserve, but the impact that they have on our lives every day, and in particular, as we battle this pandemic, I think are worth mentioning. And that is the people that work for the city, our public works folks, the ones that work in our wastewater system and our water resources system, that make sure we have clean water every day and that our system is working, and our sanitation workers that are out there every day exposed to, everything that's happening out in the community, but they're going to work every day and they're doing their job. And, people aren't necessarily holding up the signs for them. And so I wanted to take this moment to make sure that I recognize them, because I certainly appreciate the job that they do for my residents here in St. Pete. And I know they're doing it all across the state of Florida and every city across the state of Florida.
Yeah, I think when this pandemic is past, there's going to be a lot of these unsung heroes that we didn't get the headlines, and we're going to hopefully be able to get them some headlines and get them the attention and the honors that they deserve. So a big shout out to all of them. Those of you that are making those sacrifices but don't maybe feel you're getting all the attention, know that we appreciate you and we thank you, and keep it up. Never give up. I know it's tough times right now, but we will get through this, as Vice President reminds us. We will get through it, and we'll be stronger for it. Now, Mayor Kriseman, like we've been saying over the course of the evening, more than ever, it's super clear, who to vote for on November 3rd. You just shared that. What are your feelings, though, about Joe Biden over the last year of his campaign? Anything that has happened that has really cemented it for you, even before this moment, that said, wow, this guy needs to be the next president of the United States? What have you seen in Joe Biden, especially over the last year, that brought you to say that I'm going to support Joe Biden in this important, pivotal election?
Well, I'm fortunate in that over my years of being in public service, I've had the opportunity to meet the vice president on several occasions. Shortly after I became a mayor, I was invited by the vice president while I was in Washington to come to his office to talk about my community and what was happening in my community, and in particular, our most vulnerable, and how he and the president could help us in lifting our community up. And that was incredibly impactful to me. And when there was a group of us mayors that were in the White House, and we were meeting with the president and vice president. And when that meeting ended, and the president had to move on, the vice president stayed in the room with all of us and just was talking to each of us individually, and said to us, hey, if you need something, you need to call me, because I recognize the job that you're doing, and I want to make sure that you're able to do it and you have the tools that you need to do it. And as a mayor, that's not something that we were used to hearing from Washington. And it certainly isn't something under this administration that we're seeing right now. as a leader of a city, I've gotten very little, if no help, from Washington. You know, this president talks about helping us with infrastructure, and we've seen nothing from him. I know that when Vice President Biden becomes President Biden, that his administration will be looking out for cities and looking out to help mayors, because he knows that we're on the front line and we're doing the job. And so, you know, there's so many things that have happened over the course of several years, but in this past year, certainly, I loved what happened in South Carolina, how on primary night he absolutely destroyed all of the predictions, and at the same time created a new word in our dictionary, Joe-mentum. And so we all need to take Joe-mentum forward through to November and turn the White House blue again, the color it needs to be, and give us the leadership that we need to have in Washington.
Absolutely. And I want to bring somebody that helped build that Joe-mentum here in the state of Florida, in your part of the state, and has been helping us all over the state. Mr. Lou Grossman is joining us from the area of, you're in Sarasota tonight, buddy?
I am. I'm here with my wife.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Hey, guys.
Cocktail.
She just got me a cocktail.
We're having cocktails.
Please don't drink that, please.
Listen, nobody's had any sense of humor tonight, so
We
I figured
have
I
to.
would. So
You add lime or lemon to it, though. That's the question.
right.
It doesn't really matter. A little bit of cranberry.
Can I say one thing before we get into anything? This man, Mayor Kriseman, I follow him every day. I follow him on Facebook. I know what he does. He calls constituents back. He calls constituents at home. He's one of our heroes as well. I just wanted to get that in.
That's very kind.
To our party and our nation.
You're 100% right about that, and I know a big statewide leader going forward. Somebody, again, that people are looking to all over our state and really nationwide, because it's so clear that so many just don't know what to do in this moment of crisis. Yeah. Sadly, especially from 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Now, the reason that I brought you both on screen at this moment is because you know, Florida is a complicated place, and you know, we know what we want for the White House. We know what we want for our state, but we've got a lot of pockets in our state that are not very friendly to our candidates, typically Democrats, right? So they don't typically vote blue. They don't typically vote for the Democratic candidate. But it's my strong belief, and I know that several who are joining us tonight, that Joe Biden's the kind of candidate that can do better in pockets like Naples and Sarasota, and can do even better than previous candidates in areas like St. Petersburg. So I'd love for you both to share your thoughts on that. Like, what do you expect on November 3rd from Joe Biden's performance compared to where we've been in previous election cycles?
So go ahead, Lou. I'll follow you.
Okay. Well, I'm really optimistic here in Sarasota. I know that our county chairwoman, Joanne DeVries, is on, and I know what the party's doing here. I know we're gearing up. We're gearing up on the get out the vote. We're gearing up on everything virtual. I think we're in a really good position to do a heck of a lot better than we did in 2016. We have great candidates on the lesser part of the ticket. We're strong. We're enthusiastic. And I think we're going to surprise a lot of people. We have a great congressional candidate, we have a great state rep candidate, and great local candidates. And I just think we're going to do really great down here, and I'm going to surprise a lot of people.
You know, in St. Petersburg, what really gives me tremendous confidence about how we're going to do here with the Vice President leading our ticket is, you know, his appeal is so broad, you know, and I think that's the big difference, because he appeals to progressives, he appeals to moderates, he appeals to conservatives, you know, and for those, even Republicans, and I do have some friends who are Republicans, and they've said to me, I am so glad that Joe Biden is the guy that is going to be your candidate, because I didn't want to have to push that button or darken that bubble for Trump again. And you've given me a candidate that I can vote for now. And I think that's going to be true for people all throughout the state of Florida that didn't want to have to vote for Trump and were really worried as to who our candidate was going to be. And now that it's Joe, they've got that comfort that, hey, this is a guy that we can trust. This is a guy that can bring people together. This is a guy that's got tremendous experience on domestic and foreign policy and is respected inside our country and around the world. And I have a confidence that I can vote for this guy comfortably and not worry about the future of the country.
Well, I think you're right, Mayor, and specifically with Republican women as well. I think we're going to convert a lot of Republican women over to the entire ticket from Vice President Biden on down. So I'm just so pleased. As Chris knows, from day one a year ago, I've been waiting for this moment. It's been a lonely ride sometimes. We were in the wilderness for a while, and then we came back, and it was a comeback Joe. And I'm just so glad that he's on the top of our ticket. And I have to get an advertisement in because I'm running for delegate to the National Convention, and I want to be there more than anything else right now, even if it's virtually. And I just want to see the change of history.
We're going to make it happen. We're going to make it happen. And to that end, those of you that are watching on YouTube, sorry, this won't work for you, but those of you that are watching on Facebook, I'm actually going to start a poll right now. We're going to run the poll from now till for the last hour of this broadcast. And the question is real simple. What area of Florida do you think Joe Biden will do best in? South Florida, Central Florida, North Florida, or all 67 counties? Please vote, and we'll be revealing the results over the course of the evening. And we have right now on with us two people that have been engaged, know Joe Biden, and know what he stands for. Mr. Mayor, you personally have had the opportunity to meet Joe Biden. We're putting up on the screen a picture with you and your family, with the vice president. Just before you go, your thoughts on the character of this man that will be president of the United States 46, and why you think everybody who's watching us all over the state of Florida needs to have no doubt about voting for Joe Biden on November 3rd.
Well, and I'm glad you used that word character, because I do think that speaks to who Joe Biden is. It's his character, it's his heart. When I read his book about his son, it really gives you insight into this man. And I already just from my interactions I'd had with him, knew about his heart and who he was. But you really get to see the soul of this man if you read that book. If you haven't read his book, I certainly want to encourage you to read it. But have some Kleenex by your wherever you're sitting when you're reading it, because you're going to need it. This man's heart is huge. This man cares about people. This is not a guy who was born with a silver spoon in his mouth. This is a man who worked his way up and has had incredible challenges throughout his life, has persevered, and has gone on to do great things, but not forgotten where he came from, and not forgotten the people that helped bring him up. And that's very different than a lot of people that end up in politics. It's for him, it's about service. It isn't about power. It isn't about money. It's about service, and that's what public service is supposed to be. And he truly embodies that.
He is a true public servant, the kind of person that we all say we want in politics, and we've got the opportunity to put them in the White House on November 3rd. So, Mayor Kriseman, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We really, really appreciate it. And again, thank you for your patience. I know it's a challenging time for everybody in St. Pete and all over our state in the middle of this pandemic, but know that our thoughts, our prayers, we're cheering every one of those frontline responders every step of the way. And like I said at the beginning, I know we're going to emerge from this a stronger state and a stronger country, thanks to leaders like you.
Well, thank you, Chris, and thank you for those kind words. Thanks for all you do, Lou. Thank you for your friendship and for all of your hard work here. We're gonna bring I-4 home. for Joe, and along with the rest of the state. And come January, the sun's going to be shining brightly on the United States of America.
Chris, do you remember this?
Oh, I remember.
This is a creation of the creative Chris Wills from the Florida Convention. A fan of Joe.
We did Cup of Joe. We did all sorts of fun stuff, and we got much more in store. So, Mayor Kriseman, thank you again for joining us, and we'll catch you again, I'm sure, real soon. Thanks, safe,
guys.
Thank you. Before you go, and he was Mayor Kriseman was talking about the I-4 corridor, and we're going to be going to some of our friends along that stretch from Tampa to in just a little bit. But I wanted you to talk a little bit about the work that you've done that's been so pivotal so far. Literally from before the convention, the Florida Democratic Party convention, but really where this primary process, the rubber started meeting the road at the beginning in Iowa, that it wasn't all that easy for us, but you were out there, and we're going to share that on the screen. You were out there at a satellite caucus in the southwestern Florida part of our state, and you helped pick up delegates for Joe Biden very early on in this process. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Well, I've tried to be involved from the beginning. We've had regular calls coordinated by one of the great Democrats of our state, Pat Basquette, and we've been organizing throughout. You've organized the Florida Convention. We've all been out, canvassing. And this particular picture, I was asked to be a Biden precinct captain at the satellite Iowa caucus in Port Charlotte, Florida. And my wife here took this picture. And it was actually an interesting experience to be part of the Iowa caucus. We actually picked up 3 delegates for Joe that day. And it was just interesting to see Iowa people in Florida. So I've seen all different types of support for Joe, and for the primary, which was getting pretty close to a time where we're going to start locking down. There was just tremendous support at the polls that day. Tremendous support from everybody that came out to vote in the primary. And I just follow up with what everyone has said and the importance to vote by mail. I have a friend and a client who is a former postal governor of the United States Postal Service, and wrote an editorial in the Philadelphia Inquirer yesterday about saving the postal system. This is something that Representative Geller had brought up. It's a key issue, and it relates to not only postal workers, but it relates to the entire election. Trump is trying to ruin the postal system, and part of it is to suppress the vote, as the Republicans are doing. So that I was glad to hear Representative Geller bring that up. It's an issue that's going to expand, going to explode. But again, we're still working, and we need more T-shirts down here in Sarasota. We need to send them down here, and we need to get people wearing them. I wear them every day, and the reaction's been positive, even in areas where you think that maybe it's a Trump land. So we just need to get out. Continue hard work.
Yeah.
So many people are working hard, like you, Chris, and we just got to keep going, and we're going to do it.
We're going to win this thing thanks to supporters like you all over the state, and really appreciate all the work that you, and I see your wife stepped away, but I met your wife, or she's there?
Yeah, I'm here.
You have to be very, very proud of both of you, because if it wasn't for the two of you, our efforts at the Florida Democratic Party convention would not have been as successful, and we're super, super thankful for that. I mean, if you consider it, the seeds were laid at that convention that led to Joe Biden sweeping the states, winning all 67 counties in the Florida Democratic primary on March 17th. And it's my hope, how awesome would it be that we sweep all 67 counties on November 3rd? Maybe not the most likely, but if we work with that in mind, we can bring home numbers that nobody even thought possible.
Yeah.
Well, I agree.
Well, a cup of Joe was great.
And Chris, you don't get enough credit for what you do, and I know a lot of people don't know what you do behind the scenes. And I want to personally thank you, and I want to personally thank you for your friendship and for your support of the vice president. As you know, I had met the vice president several times. He used to sit in our section in the Flyers games. He's a Flyers fan. Go Flyers!
Oh, cool.
Yes. So I'm sorry, Mayor Kriseman's not on, but
Dr. Jill's a bigger fan.
the VP is a Flyers fan, and so is Dr. Jill. But I've met him several times in Philadelphia. I was hoping to meet him on the campaign trail down here right before election at our victory party, but we will meet him and we will celebrate with him, and he will move the country forward, and he will move the mess that we're in right now, and we have no doubt about it. No doubt about it.
I have great faith in. I'm a big Biden believer. I've seen him, I've watched him closely, and he's the kind of candidate that our state is going to rally behind. It's already happening. And those of you that are watching right now that maybe have friends and family members on the fence, now's the time to start those conversations, start getting them engaged. And you can do that clicking share on videos like this, clicking share on content that people like Lou and Robert Palacios and so many people are sharing on social media. Let's get Joe Biden's message out there, because like Mayor Kriseman and so many others have said tonight, it's a no-brainer. If you love this country, the vote goes resoundingly to Joe Biden on November 3rd. Thank you so much, Lou, for joining us.
Chris,
And,
thanks for inviting us,
Yes.
and thanks,
Mrs. Grossman.
I'm sorry?
Thank you to Mr. and Mrs. Grossman.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
All right. See you.
Okay, we'll be watching.
Thank you, guys.
Everybody.
And I want to share right now results of our poll so far. In the lead, 47% for South Florida. That's what we've got. So you can vote in the poll if you're watching on Facebook Live. If you're on YouTube Live, sorry, YouTube doesn't give us that feature, but the question is, what part of Florida will Biden do best in? South Florida, Central Florida, North Florida, or do you think he'll do well in all 67 counties? We'll be revealing results over the course of the evening. Now we're going to go to an area of the state that Biden needs to do really, really well in. Mayor Kriseman was talking a little bit about it before he jumped off, and that is the I-4 corridor. It's my strong belief, as I look at the numbers nationwide, where Hillary did well, where we were at in 2018, it's my strong belief that this election is likely to come down to Florida. It's likely to come down to South Florida, specifically the counties of Dade and Broward. Palm Beach important, but Dade and Broward turnout are going to be very, very pivotal. And I think what happens in that I-4 corridor, specifically in the Orlando area, where our next guest is from, Senator Vic Torres, he's going to be so, so important to this election because we know the Boricuas for Biden are out there in force and helping make sure that we flip Florida blue with Biden. How are you doing, Senator Torres?
How are you, Chris? Nice being with you today.
Nice hat.
I'm getting a little attic.
Me ganaste with the hat and the button. So,
Oh yeah, well, all about a vote for Biden is a vote for Puerto Rico, and that's what we're trying to send a message out. Puerto Ricans and all Hispanics who are here in Central Florida, Osceola, and Orange County. The message has to be strong that Joe Biden is going to do the right thing for our country and for our citizens, and especially for those Hispanic families that are suffering today. We are seeing a president that from the beginning, from Maria to present date, has neglected Hispanics and still neglect them. And he is a man about the 1% in this country, not the 99%. My background, veteran. I served in the Marine Corps. I was a cop in New York for over 20 years and 29 days. I drove a school bus, city bus. I've been a public servant, and God has blessed me to be elected as a representative and then into the Senate. And I keep fighting for the constituents, for the everyday citizens here in Florida. But guess what, folks? Joe Biden is the one who's going to bring the message to bring us all in and all up there and get things done. We need a president that's going to take care of us and take care of our families and our workers. We can't do this by ourselves. We need the federal government to help us and help us in a big time. As you know, the crisis that we're facing right now, stay at home. Don't go out if you don't need to go out. These are really issues that, for me, means a lot to the community. I know it's hard on those working who haven't received their unemployment checks, but if you get a president like Joe Biden, you can rest assured he's going to take care of us and help us in these matters. You know, it's amazing how he puts his foot in his mouth every day. So, but if you have anything to ask me, Chris, go right ahead.
Well, you are a wealth of knowledge and you have a lot of experience in our state, especially in that pivotal part of the state. A lot of people that are watching recognize that. We have a comment from Lourdes Diaz, saludando, hola Victor Torres, we love you in South Florida. So you have love all over the state, not just in your home district. Thank you, Lourdes, for watching. You can post your comments and questions both on YouTube and Facebook, and we'll share them here live. Senator Torres, what are you seeing in the midst of this pandemic crisis in your area of the state? Have you seen, as we've all seen, I know that there's people in your part of the state that are proving to be real heroes of this pandemic. What have you experienced personally as a state senator of such a pivotal state like Florida?
Well, what you're seeing here in Central Florida, especially constituents who are facing such a hardship and not getting their unemployment checks. These are issues that you might have got laid off at the beginning of March, and to this very day, you haven't received a check. There's so many obstacles, and this system, the DEO, never fixed it to keep up with the demand. So if you have 80,000 unemployment requests a day, they're only processing 20,000. And this is the thing that annoys me the most, because we keep on getting calls in our office and they're getting either bounced out, or they don't know their PIN number, or they fill out the forms and then they tell them, no, you don't qualify. These are all the issues that these residents are facing every day. And when you don't have a paycheck to pay your rent, buy your food, get around, to whatever you need to do, it hurts. And then you have on top of that the small businesses who weren't able to apply for the small business loan. This issue after issue after issue. In our office, and my staff has been Monday through Friday, and sometimes on a weekend, they check the voicemails, they check the emails, and they're responding to folks to comfort them, to make them understand. But basically, Chris, I'm telling people today, and I hope they all listen out there, you call your governor, you call your representative, especially Republican. We need to stand up. We need to start making calls to the Senate President, House Speaker, the representatives, because everybody's got to get on this boat. We're all on board, and it's unfortunate that people who stay at home, they don't have a job that can work out of their house. They have jobs that are housekeeping, service industry, care, so many stuff, that some of them, they can't stay home. They have to be working. You have your postal workers working. You have your firefighters, first responders, police, firefighters working. You have the nurses and the doctors in these hospitals working feverishly to our citizens, the nursing homes, those in those facilities that some people want to visit their loved one. They can't go in there. So there's so many things going on, and people keep calling us for answers. And for the life of me, Chris, I wish that we had special sessions. I wish we can go back to Tallahassee and put the people on notice.
we got to hold Governor DeSantis and all these people's feet to the fire. But the great thing is, Senator Torres, you know, we are seeing so many step up. You know, we saw some inspiring stories even out of the Orlando area. News 6 covered this, where the Orlando police took time to salute the workers on the front line. So many people stepping up like that to recognize the people that are making the very real sacrifices on a day-to-day basis. And I appreciate your leadership in such a pivotal area of our state, especially with so many communities in the Latino and Black community that are being disproportionately affected by this pandemic, whether in their health or even in their economics. They're really being very adversely affected. And I know that you're a big voice for those communities in the Orlando area. So I really appreciate everything that you have been doing and that you continue to do over your service in the Florida Senate. Your final thoughts before we go on specifically how Joe Biden will help provide some peace of mind to people in the midst of this crisis, and why you think he's the right man for the job to be president come November 3rd when we make that decision. Senator, I think you muted your mic. Just unmute. There you go. All right. Yeah.
You hear me?
Yes, can hear you now.
Very good. I just want to say to everyone that's hearing, from the beginning, and I mean way in the beginning, we were up in Tallahassee, and Joe Geller, Representative Joe Geller, came to the senators and said, hey, we need to get on board with Vice President Biden. And I say, yes, we need to get on board with him. And definitely, the majority of us signed on from February. But I want to say that Joe has been steady. His ship has never wavered. For those who doubted him during those hard times and those primaries. And the tide turned when Representative Congressman Claiborne came on board in South Carolina. You know, it's like a tide coming across this country and showing the people, don't give up, have hope. And it has worked that way, and it has inspired people. And I am so happy that all those candidates who ran for office for the presidency have come on board to endorse Joe. And I'm especially happy that President Obama came out. I've watched that video over and over again. Inspiring words, getting people to realize that their job is not over yet. Joe Biden is going to continue that job and make it better and fix what hasn't been fixed. And that's the idea, folks. Everything takes time. Everything takes a leadership. And the leadership is not only with the president, but with the Senate and the Congress. Right. Because that's where it counts, that he won't be stopped, that he can do the work. And rest assured that I have confidence in Vice President Biden to be our next president.
Absolutely.
And he's going to take us all. He's going to take us all to the White House.
I'm a big believer. This is not just about winning the White House. Joe Biden's going to help us win back the Senate, and we're going to win up and down the ballot all across this country, especially in the state of Florida. I want to share with you one quick comment before you go. One of our viewers loves your fedora, Janet Whitley. Thanks so much, Janet, for your kind comment of Senator Torres. Thank you so much again for your leadership and for being there with us all along. You'll see a quick picture here, right smack dab there in the middle, right above the Biden for Florida logo in that beautiful red shirt. Actually, I don't know if it's the same shirt that you're wearing tonight. I hope you've taken it off and washed it. But this was back in October at the Florida Democratic Party convention. And his position in this picture is very emblematic of his role in the campaign from very early on. Senator Vic Torres has been a big part of the center of this campaign, and you're there in the center of our state doing the hard work that we need to do to make sure that we flip Florida blue with Biden. So thank you so, so much for all your hard work, Senator Torres.
You're welcome.
Have a good night. And now we're going to go over to the west side of that I-4 corridor to Tampa, where one of my very, very good friends that I don't know how the heck I didn't meet you before this election, but I'm so honored that we have met now in the 2020 cycle because it's the most important election. Mr. Elio Mueller over in Tampa, he is somebody who builds the armies that are necessary to win elections. So Mr. Mueller, we are 1 year out from Joe Biden launching his campaign, and we are closer and closer every day, every hour, every minute that passes to that November 3rd, 7 p.m. result coming through. Where do you see we're at? What's your message to voters and supporters of Joe Biden all over this state tonight on this 1 year anniversary of Joe Biden's campaign?
It comes down to beat Trump. And it's great to be in a campaign where we have a candidate that is doing his job as a candidate so well. What he does and what he says every day, he's hitting it out of the park for the last couple of months, several months. And so if he's doing his job, I want to do my job to get him there. And I think all of us need to be focused on doing our job to make this happen. We wake up every morning and we want to throw things at the TV, and we go to sleep wanting to throw things at the TV. The president we have. And this country has the opportunity to get the president it deserves.
Sure.
And that's Joe Biden.
Absolutely.
Has to be a big focus on our part. We have to. We were doing a great job leading into the Florida primary, and then this pandemic came along to build an army, to build a core of volunteers that was going to continue to expand with momentum going into the fall. That's been interrupted somewhat. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to continue to build that momentum given the realities of the circumstances. The campaign has done an excellent job, yourself included, and several others, to keep these through these type of media, trying to keep us talking to one another, those of us who are already in. But I'm more concerned about all the ones that aren't in yet, all the people that we need to add in here. For example, are a lot of the people that are building armies and have been for years at our Democratic executive committees. I know here in Hillsborough County, our DEC has been building a fighting force for the last 4 years since Hillary. And but unfortunately, in the primary as an organization, they couldn't be for one candidate or another. By now we would have folded them in and had all of our Biden team together with all the other campaigns on some coordinated campaign effort, and those kind of things are slowed down. So I hope that we get some guidance soon from the campaign as to what methods and practices we might be able to safely apply. A lot of the playbook on how you run a campaign leading into a presidential election, going into a convention, that playbook's out the window. We and the campaign at the highest levels are reinventing a playbook as to what we're going to be able to do.
We definitely need to be thinking creatively outside the box. Like we started at the beginning of this broadcast, we brought on some younger voters and younger supporters of Joe Biden that are helping us with more creative social media strategies, coming up with ways to get Joe Biden's message out there. And the great thing is I'm seeing in the comment section of the video, people that are on the campaign, that are watching, the great thing is from the very beginning, they've been listening, they've been interacting with us. And I'm seeing from Joe Biden's campaign something that I have not seen in most other presidential campaigns, where the staff is very much engaged with what's going on the ground day to day. And especially in this weird environment that we're all in, a very challenging environment that we're all in, that's going to be so crucial and so important. But somebody that has the know-how, that has the experience, that has the connections, and most importantly, the willingness to do the hard work that is so crucial to victory on November 3rd, like yourself, Elio, are so pivotal to making sure that we win big. Because as I've said several times tonight, all of us would love that map of Florida is covered in blue and that we see the country covered in blue from sea to shining sea. Because again, as much as I believe that Joe Biden deserves that, it's really what Trump and Trumpism deserves. Anything that you want to say to your fellow Biden supporters in the Tampa area specifically before we move on to the northern part of our state? We've been moving our way from the south all the way to the north. And Tampa is going to be a very important area, the Hillsborough County area. Your thoughts? You saw a lot of excitement leading up to the primary, and we won all 67 counties in the primary. Where do you think we'll be at November 3rd with the general?
I haven't seen the kind of excitement that came together at the end there before the Florida primary since Bill Clinton.
Right.
That kind of connection to people, and people would jump out of their skin to respond and say, "What can I do?" and get involved with this campaign. That was it was spectacular, and we need to capture that. We need to keep it. We need to play forward. We need to realize that our worst nightmare is, well, I can only speak for myself. My worst nightmare is not to wake up on November 4th and see that we lost the election. That's my second worst nightmare. My worst nightmare is to think that I didn't do everything possible to defeat this monster that we have in the White House. And so, I tell people that I'm in this to really fighting for the democracy of this country, for the future of this country, for my children, for my grandchildren, for my son in the Army to get a new commander in chief. There are so many things that make this moment in history so powerful. And right now we realize that we need a president that will finish getting us out of this pandemic. Unfortunately, I think this thing's going to last longer than Election Day and longer than Inauguration Day. And we need for Joe Biden to be able to step in there and finish getting this thing cleaned up.
And we have somebody with great optimism that's watching. Your kind of optimism, my kind of optimism. Sammy Pollock is joining us on Facebook, and he says we need to, and I definitely think we can, crush Trump in Hillsborough. And it seems that our audience is also pretty optimistic about how well we'll do all over the state, because the poll is looking interesting. What part of Florida will Biden do best in? 48% right now say South Florida, but not far behind, 43% say all 67 counties will do very well in. And I know Elio Mueller, you in Tampa, and really your work is going to go well beyond the work that we need to do in Tampa. You are going to be pivotal to making sure we flip Florida blue with Biden on November 3rd. So thank you so much for joining us tonight, and thank you for everything that you've done so far. Let's keep thinking creatively and working together to make sure that this result that we so desperately need comes about on November 3rd. Thank you, buddy. Appreciate it, and stay safe.
All right.
So now we will head up north. Our state, as I said earlier, is a very complicated state, but in a lot of ways, it's only as complicated as the country. I'm a big believer, and our next featured person, I think, agrees with me that, and through my conversations with her, she has shared with me that she agrees that Florida is very representative of the country as a whole. We have a really good reflection of what the United States of America looks like here in the Sunshine State. It's very diverse and has pockets from the south to the central part, all the way up to the north, that look like the rest of America. And that's why it was very encouraging to me to see such a resounding win for Joe Biden on the March 17th primary, where he won all 67 counties. That tells you a lot about where we're going for the November 3rd primary. And our next featured guest is somebody who, from very early on, basically the first major name in our state, came out and said the person that can flip Florida blue is Joe Biden, and that person is Gwen Graham. Gwen, how are you?
Hi, Chris. I'm great. I'm sitting outside. I thought I'd give a little outdoor Florida background. How is everybody?
Doing very well. We need to get outdoors in a safe way, but we need to all get outdoors a little more and breathe in that awesome, fresh Florida air. So thank you for sharing that with us.
Can you hear me okay?
Perfectly.
Okay.
A
A little
little bit of the breeze, which is awesome too.
And my umbrella is spinning around a little bit, and my dog is right over there. So I just warn you, she may start barking at any moment.
We love Bark for Biden. We love it.
Bark for Biden, exactly.
That's
She's
right.
all in for Joe Biden.
Wonderful. The entire Graham family, you and your father and your mother, very early on supporters, and really thank you for that. I know the vice president must be extremely thankful to you for your leadership in the state. There were a lot of people that ran for governor last time. There were lots of people that are current elected officials, former elected officials, that people like you, Representative Geller, were talking to them and saying, come and join this team. This is going to be the winning team. And lots of them sat it out, waited it out, but you were out there from the very beginning. And I know you've shared it quite a few times, but we may have some new viewers that haven't heard your perspective. And I'd love you to start out with your thoughts on why Joe Biden is the guy, is the candidate that can win Florida and thus will win the White House.
Well, thank you, Chris, and thank you to everyone who's tuned in today on this very significant day. It's a year since the vice president got into this race, and what we're going through with the coronavirus is something that I think makes it even more obvious to anyone who's thinking about what qualities should you have in someone as the president of the United States. Is we need a president that has empathy. We need a president that has a heart for people. And I have been very fortunate to know the vice president for a very long time. He served in the United States Senate with my father for a very long time. And I just know he's a really good person. But regardless of that, when he decided to get into the race for president, I made my decision very pragmatically. And I wasn't asked by anyone to jump in and endorse on day one. I actually endorsed a year ago today. But I did it because I recognize that the vice president is the one candidate that could win Florida and will win Florida. I feel more confident than ever that he will win Florida. Because Florida is a difficult state. It is a difficult state because of our size, because of our diversity, because of how different one part of the state is from another part of the state. But I love those differences. To me, those differences are what makes Florida so special. And when I look at different places across Florida, from Miami, where I was born and where I was raised, to Tallahassee, where I sit today, where I came when I was 15 years old, when my father was elected governor. That was a unique experience, coming from South Florida in high school, moving to North Florida. But that was when I fell in love with North Florida. My campaign slogan for my congressional race was the North Florida Way. And some people really didn't, it meant different things to different people. But to me, what the North Florida Way meant was caring about each other, and even in our differences. And North Florida is more conservative, and many pockets of our panhandle are very conservative. But I was able to win here. And I think that shows you that there is an opportunity for the vice president to win. And so the reason I supported him from day one was because I knew of all those qualities that he has. But I also knew that he could build the coalition across Florida that is the winning statewide coalition. It takes a candidate that can bring very different coalitions, very different groups from Miami to Tallahassee to Pensacola to Jacksonville together. And I think this election is going to be won by the strong turnout in South Florida, in Miami-Dade, Broward, Palm Beach, along that infamous I-4 corridor. And I was listening to some of the previous speakers. Thank you to Mayor Kriseman and for his leadership in St. Pete, and for Senator Torres and his leadership in Orlando, and his daughter Amy, all dear, dear friends of mine. And then in Chev, I don't want to leave Chev out, in Broward County down in South Florida, and North Florida, where from Leon County, which is Tallahassee, which is a more liberal county, all the way over to Escambia County, which is Pensacola. There are a lot of people up here who will vote for the vice president. And you know this, Chris, from day one, I was saying that we had an abundance of riches in our Democratic field. What we did not have was the luxury to lose.
Right.
And as great as so many of the candidates are, and I'm so thrilled that we are in unity, and that all of the those that ran for president have now gotten behind the vice president. I did not think a single one of them could win Florida. And we are so fortunate to have a candidate that can build that coalition, that can have that broad appeal, and that I'm getting the chills just saying this, because there is nothing more important. And people say to me, what are you doing now, Gwen? I'm like, I'm doing a lot, but my focus, my commitment, my priority is to make sure that on November 3rd, we elect Vice President Biden, the next president of the United States, because there is nothing more important for our future, including what we're going through now. And I think what we're going through now has made so many people realize that who you elect matters.
Mm-hmm.
I say that what we're living through now is a real life civics education, that who you elect matters.
Yeah.
And so, look, nobody can get overconfident. I'm not overconfident, even though I say I have my gut, which my gut is usually always right, Chris. But I mean, my gut tells me that the vice president will win Florida. My gut tells me that my very scientific gut that he will be able to bring back those Obama-Trump voters from the Midwestern states where we lost by so little. I mean, that he will be able to bring those voters back, and we will save our country. I don't mean to sound overly dramatic, but I believe that this is true. Florida, we win Florida, game over.
Mm-hmm.
Trump can't win the presidency. He cannot be reelected without the state of Florida. They're going to put an incredible amount of attention, time, resources, money into winning this state, because the Republicans know that as well. But I believe in Floridians, and I believe that there will be a desire, a commitment to go out and to vote to restore quality, competency, caring, empathy, people-focused government at our federal level on November 3rd, 2020.
You put it in a nutshell better than I think anybody could. And I think so many have been looking to you for the right guidance on this decision and the right guidance on what's going on in our state. Because like you said, what we're going through, imagine, I tell people often, and it's not, I don't want to seem too, I guess I'm a little biased, let's just say that. But I tell people, imagine what our state would be like if Gwen Graham was governor right now. It's literally the exact opposite of all the things that have gone wrong so badly for so many people across our state. And you have been pointing out some very real moments where people's lives have been put in danger by the current governor, by his administration. And you've also, thankfully, been able to help highlight some of those heroes that have been doing such a great job in spite of the lack of leadership from the governor and the person that he turns to most to decide how he's going to make decisions, Donald Trump. So can you share with our audience that maybe isn't yet following you on Twitter, where you do a lot of great work sharing these important stories that otherwise sometimes, people are so busy they might miss, and I encourage people to follow you on Twitter and everywhere that you are on social media. But, what's your take as to what's going on right now? And Joe Biden's often been asked, what would you do differently if you were president? I'd love to know what you would be doing differently right now in this moment as governor.
Well, where do I start? Well, first thing and I don't want to spend too much time belaboring this. I want to talk about all the wonderful things that people are doing today in this crisis, the public health crisis that we're in, to show love and support and caring and support again for one another. But I will just say that I tweeted at the governor, and I tweet at him every day, asking him on February 25th, what was he doing to get the state of Florida ready for the coronavirus? And I know they watch my tweets. As a matter of fact, just the other night, someone inadvertently liked one of my tweets that I know didn't intend to, but regardless, I know they look at them. And so they being the Florida GOP. So sadly, obviously, tragically, the answer to that question was nothing. And I would have been like the governor of Ohio, Mike DeWine, who happens to be a Republican. But he has done a phenomenal job of making decisions early that are tough. Leadership is making the hard decisions when you're standing out there alone. When you're making those decisions because you know they're the right things to do, not because other people have told you or other people have done it before you. And so Mike DeWine has done that. He planned, he got his state ready, he made the tough decisions early, and it's been reflected in Ohio. I am very concerned because I have been watching the data. I don't think our data in Florida is accurate. And if we're not relying on accurate data to make these tough decisions, then we're making decisions that are going to continue to put Floridians' lives in jeopardy. And so I think what's happened recently, and then I'm going to stop talking about this subject, but is when President Trump threw the governor of Georgia under the bus. I mean, literally went on one of his ubiquitous press conferences and said that he thought that he was not pleased with what, I don't know exactly what he said. Thank goodness I can't speak like Trump speaks, but that he was not pleased with what Kemp was doing. And if you notice, DeSantis, who was gung-ho to get Florida back open, has now taken a more restrained approach. Well, I call that the Brian Kemp effect. Brian Kemp, I think is his name, Governor Kemp of Georgia. It's the Kemp effect, that he's now seen that the president is not going to be supportive of opening things up as quickly as he initially wanted. And that's one of the problems we have with Trump, is there's no consistent leadership. What we should have done as a country is to have a statewide plan and a consistent plan. The borders of our state don't protect Florida from what's going on in Georgia now.
Correct.
I actually put a tweet up earlier today about how you can cut your hair by yourself. And I said, cut your hair, do this yourself, don't go to Georgia. So anyway, so we've got real problems with our leadership in Florida. And Governor DeSantis, I serve with Governor DeSantis in Congress. And I think his policies and his issues that he's had have far predated the coronavirus. But the rest of the state of Florida is seeing what a weak leader he is. And it's just tragic that it took a public health crisis for that to become well known. But you know what I really want to talk about, Chris?
Yeah.
Let's pivot to something. I got to tell you that I see in the world, in the worst of times, the best comes out in people.
Agreed.
In the worst of times, the best comes out in people. And that's what I have been seeing. People caring about people, going the extra mile. I have worked in our schools to help get food out to families and students. There goes my dog. She's chasing a squirrel. She's ever vigilant in her squirrel hunting. But to make sure that people don't go hungry. In our school system, many kids, that's the only reliable meal that they will have is breakfast and lunch every day. So I want to give a shout out to Nikki Freed, our Commissioner of Agriculture, who made sure that all of our school lunch programs were going to be able to be continued. So I've been working at the schools, handing out meals, and seeing, being able to look people in the eyes and feel everyone is scared, and rightfully so. But there's also a lot of compassion and humanity that comes out when people are living in a situation where from day to day you don't know if someone that you know or you love is going to get sick. And this is such, I think I heard your friend Emilio, is that how you say his name?
Elio, yeah.
Elio, okay.
Miller, yeah.
He is absolutely right. I've become consumed with learning as much as I can about the coronavirus. And this is a very, very deadly, mysterious disease. And I would just implore anyone who's making leadership decisions to recognize that no human life is worth any amount of profit. And I would also implore them to recognize that it may not be your mother or your father or your sister or your brother or your child that is sick or has died, but act as if it is. Make your decisions as if it is your family that could potentially catch this virus. And even if you don't die, the lingering impacts of this are significant. So I just want to say thank you to all of the great people, all of the caring people, all of the doctors, all of the police officers, and my husband is law enforcement, who are putting they put their lives on the line every day. Our law enforcement, they put their lives on the line every day, but now you never know. I mean, many people are asymptomatic, as you know, Chris. I mean, you don't know that you have the condition. And, my parents are very, very high risk, and I worry about them every day. I have to admonish them to be careful. So there goes the sun. So anyway, it's as difficult as this is, I have great faith in our human spirit, and we will come out on the other side of this. And particularly with President Joe Biden, we will come out on the other side of this, and we will be a stronger, better, more empathetic, more loving, more caring. People think that, and I know we're running out of time, people think that because I have been so hard on the governor that I don't like him, or, none of that's true. I love Florida and I love Floridians, and I just want good decisions to be made. And that's why I have confidence on November 3rd that as we live through this civics lesson that's more like a nightmare, that people will recognize that who we elect matters. And they have a good, kind, qualified, capable, ready to go on day one person in Joe Biden that we can put our confidence in and our faith in. And he will, I'm getting the chills again, but he will be someone that will make sure that we come out of this Trump period of our nation's history, and that we will know that it was purely an aberration, and get back to caring leaders that we can be proud of, not only within our country, but internationally. And Joe Biden will be that person.
We must prove that we are greater than this president. It is absolutely essential that we do that on November 3rd. And you've known Joe Biden for a really long time. I wanted to share a picture with you and the senator that we all love, Senator Nelson, and
Yes.
Joe Biden. You've known him for a long time. So, Gwen, before you go, your final message to all Floridians as we, weigh these final few months between now and the November 3rd election, what's at stake? Anything else you want to say to our audience tonight on this 1-year anniversary of the Joe Biden campaign?
Well, first and foremost, stay safe, stay healthy, don't take any unnecessary risks, and think about what's in front of us, the future that we will be able to get back, not only as Floridians, but as Americans. And this election is not it's not about being a Democrat or Republican. It is about being an American. And I'm so proud to have served in Congress and to have run for governor, though I was not successful, because it has instilled in me the goodness of people. And that's what Joe Biden represents. And so as we go forward, and there's not many days, Chris, you probably know how many days until November 3rd, but there's not that many days. And we're all going to be consumed with dealing with the coronavirus, which is what is at the forefront of everybody's minds. I know politics now seems like it's not even something we should be worried about. But in a sense, it's all tied up together. It's all tied up together. Our ability to come out of this crisis that we're seeing as a nation is tied in with our ability to defeat Donald Trump on November 3rd. Because I live in fear of a reelected Trump. Think about it. He has no guardrails now. Think about what that would be to have someone like him in the White House who never has to worry about anything. The only thing that keeps them even remotely constrained, and I say remotely because we all know it's what he does and what he says, like what he said 2 nights ago. It's insanity.
Yeah.
That this man is the president of the United States.
Yeah.
We all deserve better.
Yeah.
And Joe Biden is not just better, he's going to be fabulous. He's going to be a great president, the president we need at this time. When I supported him a year ago, when I came out strong for him, I had no idea. None of us had any idea we would be where we are today, dealing with a public health crisis that's going to be with us for a very long time. The leadership that the vice president, when he's president, will provide will lead us out of this. And we will go from a very bad civics lesson, living through a very bad civics lesson, to living through an education that who you elect can make the difference in not just our country's future, but our individual future, our individual lives, our individual safety.
For sure.
And so I just hope, and we're running out of time, and I'm hoping everybody will join the next virtual event with the vice president.
Yes.
But I just hope everybody stays safe and that everybody recognizes that we're about to come out of what has been a nightmare for our country, not just because of the Trump presidency, but because of the coronavirus. And with the leadership of the vice president as president, we will survive, as Gloria Gaynor says. You know that song, Chris? Do you know
That's
that
right.
song?
That's right. I will survive.
You may not know that song.
I
But
can't
we will
sing, but
survive.
yeah. We will. Gwen, thank you so much for taking time to be with us tonight on this momentous occasion of the 1-year anniversary of Joe Biden launching his campaign. To answer your question, 192 days. That's what's left between now and November 3rd. Make the most of every one of those days.
Let me get my fingers in the screen. It will be like that. It
Yeah.
will be here before we know it. And of course, we have a lot of issues with how are we going to vote safely. I think everybody who's listening, please vote by mail. Vote. If there was ever a time. And to those people that maybe are not on the vice president's team yet, think about it this way. This is about our country's future. and a vote that, the third party votes or something that you feel you're making a protest vote, vote for your country, vote for your future. That vote is Joe Biden.
Absolutely.
Let's make
Let's
sure
go, Joe.
we don't see what happened in 2016 happen again. It won't, because I know that the time now we're united, and people know that we have got to defeat Donald Trump, and we will together.
Floridians won't let it happen. We're going to make Joe Biden our next president.
We'll be celebrating. I will come back, whatever, I want to thank you, Chris. I know we're running out of time, but I want to thank you, Chris. You are phenomenal in all that you do. I know how hard you work. Anytime you want me to participate in anything that you do, I'll be there for you. And Daniela.
It's been awesome to have you. Daniela loves you very much. And so does Ann Little, who says hello and go Joe. Thank you so much, Gwen, for joining us all the way from the Panhandle. We've gone from South Florida all the way to North Florida, and we couldn't have ended with our guests in a better position with a better person than Gwen Graham. So thank you so much for joining us. But as we prepare, as Gwen was saying, for the vice president, I want to bring somebody on screen who is going to take these last few moments as the Joe Biden campaign gets ready to broadcast to the country and to the world on this 1-year anniversary of his campaign. Somebody who's working very closely with Joe Biden in his headquarters, a gentleman by the name of Mr. Emerson Howells. How are you, Emerson?
Hi, Chris. I'm good, and thank you so much for having me. I know Joe is about to start, so I'll keep this quick. And to be honest, I could not have given a much better field pitch than Congresswoman Graham just gave it anyway. So she did my job for me. Thank you so much.
Emerson, just so you know, I will let you know as soon as the vice president's event officially begins, so that you, but take it away, sir. Let our audience know how they can help Joe win in November.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And yeah, we are trying to be as active as we can digitally here in Florida. And so there are 2 primary ways we would love to have anyone's involvement. And if it's possible to give people my phone number through this, it would be great.
Sure.
I'm not sure how to put that up, but I'll get back to you with that. But so we want to host, at this stage in the campaign, we'd be having people host house parties for supporters to come together. We still want to do that, just in a digital safe space. So we're encouraging supporters to pair up with an organizer like myself and host a digital house party, connect with your community, let us connect with you guys here in Florida, through Zoom or Google Hangouts, and organize how we best can campaign in your community. So that's the one way, and we'd love to have you pair up with an organizer to host a virtual event. The second way is something us organizers have been doing for a while, and we're excited to have available now for volunteers. We're making community calls throughout the state of Florida. And so that means calling people and not necessarily asking for, money or for participation in the campaign, but just calling as a representative of the campaign and checking in and making sure that they're doing okay with everything going on in the world right now. And, hopefully they are in a safe space where they're doing okay. But if they're not, we have a list of resources to provide to try to help, access to local phone banks or local food banks or, unemployment services and stuff like that. So we would love to have your guys' help making these community calls across Florida. And to get involved, we have a website, joebiden.com/organize-now. And it's joebiden.com/organize-now. And we'd love to have you guys go that site and, help in any way you can, whether it's those phone calls, hosting an event, or even posting a sign in your door thanking a local first responder. Any way to help, big or small, we want you as part of this campaign. So thank you guys so much. And thank you, Chris, for having me on.
It's really been an honor to have you, to have Congresswoman Graham help us close this out. And we are basically, don't go anywhere, because the person of the hour is going live as we speak. They are going to be broadcasting to the entire nation, to the entire world on this occasion of the 1-year anniversary of the Joe Biden campaign. It's happening, guys. It's happening as we speak. A year ago, none of us imagined we'd be in this moment. There's just so much party unity happening right now. A lot of us thought it would go a little bit longer than it has, but we're so proud that people like Emerson are organizing on the ground people like Gwen have been helping to build a coalition of people all over crucial states like the state of Florida, and people like you that are watching from home right now. You all are going to be the ones that are going to make the difference. Think creatively. How can we help spread Joe Biden's message? Share this video. Share the videos that the Joe Biden campaign posts on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram on a regular basis. You all can be that difference between the campaign not reaching a loved one of yours that perhaps may not have gotten Joe Biden's message had it not been for you coming up with a creative way to share it. So you right now that's watching right now can and will be the difference in this campaign. I want to encourage you to connect with all of our platforms on social media, Facebook. We've got all the pages are Biden for FL. If you live in Miami, you can join 305 for Joe. If you live in Broward, join Broward for Biden. If you live in Palm Beach, join Palm Beach for Biden. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and as well on WhatsApp. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. And it is time for the Joe Biden Soul of the Nation Saturday. And we're going to transition over to that right now.
Every day,
thank you guys again for joining us tonight.
There's a saying, crises don't make heroes. They just unveil them to our eyes. And that has never been more true. These dark times have shown new light on the brave guardians who live on our
You'll hear
front
from
lines.
heroes
The
saving
doctors and
lives from
nurses fighting around the
COVID-19.
clock to beat
We'll
the
look back at
onslaught
some of
of
our
an
favorite
unfamiliar
moments from the
disease.
campaign
The
over the
police,
last year.
firemen,
We'll
and first
premiere a brand new music video from musical guest Billy Porter. And you'll hear from my two favorite people, Mom and Dad, Dr. Jill Biden and Vice President Biden, about how our battle to restore and heal the soul of the nation will continue through November. Again, thank you all from the bottom of our hearts. Stay safe, stay well, and be kind to one another. We are our brother's keeper. Thank you.
Thank you to all of our frontline workers and first responders who are out there every day.
All of the healthcare professionals and those who work in hospitals to keep it clean.
Thank you so much to our health heroes who rushed in there and put their lives on the line to help make our world a safer and better place.
Thank you so much for everything that you do for our community, for keeping us safe, for keeping us strong.
We couldn't get through this crisis without you. So thank you.
Men and women who are working on our docks and in our grocery stores, driving the trucks and who are doing the work in our warehouses.
Firefighters, grocery store clerks, sanitation workers, and so many more.
The folks in the healthcare field, our doctors, nurses, orderlies, paramedics, all those who are taking care of us today.
I want to say thank you to our nation's heroes who are on the front lines fighting the coronavirus every day.
Laundry services, custodial services, food services,
all the trash collectors, postal service people, small business owners,
healthcare workers, doctors, nurses.
We appreciate you and what you're doing to keep us safe.
Go to joebiden.com/Soul Saturday for more information on how to get involved.
Thank you to all for joining us in these tough times to shine the light on the true heroes who every day breathe life into the soul of our nation. There's a saying, crises don't make heroes. They just unveil them to our eyes. And that has never been more true. These dark times have shown new light on the brave guardians who live on our front lines. The doctors and nurses fighting around the clock to beat the onslaught of an unfamiliar disease. The police, firemen, and first responders who run towards danger to lift others to safety. The grocery store clerks and mail carriers, sanitation and transit workers, whom too many have taken for granted for too long. They never signed up to risk their lives for you and me. but that's exactly what they're doing with honor and courage. And then there are the millions of everyday Americans, neighbors helping neighbors, an outpouring of volunteers, ordinary people who are finding a strength and spirit within themselves that shines through even in the darkest night. In a time of such cynicism and fear, it's the most inspiring wave of light. Leaders across this country have so much to learn from these heroes, and we owe it to them to have their backs in this fight. When I first joined Joe Biden's team last year, that's part of what drew me to him. Joe Biden has always fought for those millions of people ready to serve something bigger than themselves. Joe Biden has been through tough times in life and knows how to persevere and find purpose. That's what he'll do as president. Call forth our goodness and honor those millions of selfless acts of courage with a kind of steady, truthful leadership that this nation and these heroes so deserve. I want to introduce one of those heroes to you now. From my hometown of Atlanta, Jasmine Crow. For 3 years, Jasmine cut coupons and cooked Sunday dinner for 500 people from her one-bedroom apartment, and then delivered it to the homeless and to the seniors. Then she founded a company to take surplus food from stores and restaurants to nonprofits fighting hunger. Now she's working around the clock to deliver groceries to homebound families in need. Families who've lost their paychecks, who can't leave their homes, who are balancing fear of this deadly virus with the terror of not being able to provide for their children. In Joe Biden's America, in our America, we will have her back. And together, we will have the backs of everyone in need.
It's an honor to be with you, Mayor Bottoms, and I just want to take a moment to thank you for your fearless leadership of the city of Atlanta. It's been so inspiring to watch you lead, and I'm excited to be with so many inspiring people from around the country today. The idea of Soul Saturday means a lot to me. As Mayor Bottoms said, I started an initiative called Sunday Soul in 2013 in the city of Atlanta. And it started just driving through downtown and seeing hundreds of people that were experiencing homelessness and believing that even though I didn't have a lot, I could still make a difference. So that first meal that I made was just a spaghetti dinner. I fed about 125 people, and I continued to go back and do that every 2 weeks until I was feeding almost 500 people on a bi-weekly basis. And so it proved to me that I could start small and impact a really great amount of people. That initiative led me to start Gooder, which today has recovered nearly 3 million pounds of surplus food that would have otherwise ended up in landfill in a country where so many people go hungry. Today, our company feeds thousands of people across 7 cities, including many who have recently lost their jobs and been cut off from their day-to-day lives in communities across the country affected by COVID-19. We are facing food shortages that we've never seen before. And for many, this is the first time that they've experienced hunger in their lifetime. For those families, home is a hard place to be right now. There are empty refrigerators, there are heavy minds, and lots of worry. We literally can see thousands of people starving in the richest country in the world. That's a product of this crisis and of the structural issue of hunger in this country, where last year, nearly 40 million people experienced food insecurity, even as 72 billion pounds of perfectly good food was thrown out. Hunger is not an issue of scarcity. It's a matter of logistics. But every one of us has the power to make a difference, and I believe that I'm proof of that. We all can tackle problems, even the toughest problems in the toughest times, to make our communities better. Dr. King, in his final speech to striking sanitation workers in Memphis, reminded us all of the parable of the Good Samaritan. He asked us to change the questions we often ask ourselves when faced with suffering. It's not, if I stop to help this man, what will happen to me? It's, if I do not stop to help this man, what will happen to him? That's our credo in our community and in the soul of this nation. That's who we are as a country. We're all going to keep living by that until elected President Joe Biden, who does the same.
Thank you, Jasmine. You represent the best in all of us. And I know that you agree that's what Joe Biden does as well. We are so grateful in this city and across this country to have you standing in the gap for those in need. You are the soul of our nation, and that's why it's been so great to partner with you in the city of Atlanta. But I look forward to the day when Joe Biden can stand with you and partner with you as the President of the United States.
We're facing a crisis unlike any we've ever faced in this nation's history. We're being challenged, tested, pushed to our limits. And I couldn't be prouder of the American people and how they're responding. We're coming together, stepping up. You can see it all across the nation. Ordinary Americans doing extraordinary things. It's the story of America. Nowhere is it more true than on the front lines of this crisis. The doctors, the nurses, healthcare workers, first responders, firefighters, cops, caring for others more than themselves, doing their job in the most difficult of circumstances, putting their lives on the line every day, often without the protective equipment they need and deserve. And still they don't stop. This is a war, and these are our soldiers. As president, I wouldn't send an American soldier anywhere in the world without the equipment and protection they need. We should not do any less for the heroes on the front lines in this battle we're in now. We need to support them, pray for them, and when this crisis is over, never forget what they have done. I've talked about the soul of this nation. We're seeing it. We're seeing it on display in this crisis. Courage, bravery, a belief that we're all part of something bigger than ourselves. This crisis isn't going to defeat America. Not today, tomorrow, or ever. This is the United States of America, and there's nothing we can't do if we do it together. The American people have never, ever, ever, ever let their country down. We just got to give them all they need now.
American history is not a fairy tale. Thomas Jefferson wrote what many believe to be the most important document in human history. He was a slaveholder. We've never lived up to our American ideals. Jefferson himself didn't. But what he wrote has pulled us towards justice for more than 2 centuries. It's always a fight, and it's a battle that is never fully finished. But if Donald Trump is reelected, he will forever and fundamentally alter the character of this nation. If we give Donald Trump 4 more years, this will not be the country envisioned by Washington. This will not be the nation bound together by Lincoln. This will not be the nation lifted up by Roosevelt or inspired by Kennedy. It will not be the nation that Barack Obama proved bends toward justice. We can't and I will not let this man be reelected President of the United States of America.
A year ago today, Joe Biden launched this campaign for President of the United States. It was a spring day, full of faith that we will unite as a country and win the battle for our future and for the soul of the nation. We never thought it would be easy. As Vice President Biden said then, Donald Trump is a threat unlike we have ever seen. The lies, division, and fear all made clear that the character of our country is on the ballot. But now, in the throes of the worst national crisis in generations, it's clear what we have to lose. The crisis has reminded the nation why truth, honor, and steady leadership matters, and what a life and death difference it makes who's in the White House. Never before has an election been more important. Joe Biden has spent a lifetime serving others. Throughout this pandemic, Vice President Biden has stepped up with clear ideas and compassion and shone a light on the courage and goodness of the American people, who always come through in times of crisis. Through world wars and economic depression, 9/11 and hurricanes, our people have learned to do so much with so little, for so many, for so long. We beat the toughest odds because we've always held tight to the hope that we will rise again. And hope is the candle that shines brightest in the dark in times like now. The American people deserve a president who reflects and rallies that strength and heart. We know it's not the depth of the darkness that defines us, It's our response that will be remembered. So while I know we'll all be busy helping our communities, doing some of the toughest, most meaningful work of our lives, I hope you will take time to join us on this campaign. Joe Biden will lead us through a long and just recovery. He will heal what has been broken and restore the soul of our nation.
Everything is at stake in this next election. You know, as an African-American man, I've had a lot of sleepless nights. We're seeing things rise from the underbelly of America, and we are so much better than that. I support Joe Biden because I feel that Joe Biden has the vision to take America where America needs to go. He's concerned about people. He's not just the vice president. He's an American. And I think the biggest thing about being an American is being concerned about your neighbor. We need to feel together again, and we need to feel like one nation. It's in our hands, and we have to do all we can do to get Joe Biden elected.
As of this morning, former Vice President Joe Biden became the apparent nominee of the Democratic Party.
Joe Biden officially kicked off his 2020 presidential campaign in Philadelphia on Saturday.
And his campaign ad makes a powerful statement about you-know-who. Take a look.
Images of white supremacists marching in Charlottesville, framing his vision of what's at stake in this election.
This is not who we are. This is not who we are. And I absolutely refuse to accept the notion that that's who we have to be.
President Trump took note of Biden's announcement today. Mr. Trump tweeted, quote, "Welcome to the race, Sleepy Joe."
Our politics has become so mean, so petty, so negative, so partisan, so angry. And our president is the divider in chief. Oh, yeah! The single most important thing we have to accomplish is defeat Donald Trump.
After Charlottesville, I said that I believe that we're in a battle for the soul of America. I say it again today, we're in the battle for the soul of America.
We also have to rebuild the backbone of this country, the middle class, and this time bring everybody along. Because Wall Street did not build America. You build America. You build America. And unions built the middle class.
Everyone knows who Donald Trump is. We have to show people who we are. We choose unity over division. We choose science over fiction. We choose truth over lies. I'm not backing down. I'm not going to be distracted by his lies, his spears, his extortion, his name calling. I'm going to stay focused on your lives. And I mean this from the bottom of my heart, on your lives.
Let's go, Joe! 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 Let's go, Joe!
Tonight, the first votes in the 2020 Democratic presidential primary.
Joe Biden's trying to bounce back after what he calls a gut punch from what appears to be a fourth-place finish in the Iowa caucuses.
ABC News projects that Senator Bernie Sanders will win the New Hampshire primary.
We just heard from the first two of 50 states, two of them. Now, where I come from, that's the opening bell.
Early voting is already underway in Nevada.
Coming in second with his best early state finish yet, Joe Biden hoping for a bit of momentum of his own in the next contest.
We know Joe, but most importantly, Joe knows us.
CNN projects that Joe Biden is the winner in South Carolina.
All those who've been knocked down, counted out, left behind, this is your campaign.
And right on the heels of the South Carolina primary, Super Tuesday, 14 states will hold primaries.
We need a politics that's about decency, a politics that brings back dignity.
And in Joe Biden, we have someone who, in fact, is the antithesis of Donald Trump.
And that is why I am endorsing Joe Biden for president.
And it was certainly a Super Tuesday for Joe Biden. No question about that. He rode a fast-breaking wave to score a primary comeback beyond any that has come before.
I really believe we're creating a moment. And we're doing this by bringing together America's very race, ethnicity, gender, and economic station.
Biden has essentially sealed the nomination.
Let me start by saying the obvious. These aren't normal times. This crisis has reminded us that government matters.
And I know we share the understanding that we've got to go forward right now and out of this in an unprecedented way.
And we have seen the importance of having a leader that we can count on in a crisis. It's not Donald Trump, it is Joe Biden.
And that's why I'm so proud to endorse Joe Biden for President of the United States.
These days, I think a lot about the words written by the philosopher Kierkegaard. He said, faith sees best in the dark. And the Lord knows these days are dark days in this nation and across the world. This virus is tough, but America's tougher. The American story is a story of ordinary people doing extraordinary things given half a chance. We're seeing this all around us. Courage, strength, selflessness, resilience. I know we'll get through this, and we'll be stronger for it. I promise you.
Let's go, Joe! 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 Let's go, Joe!
Hi, folks. My name is Catherine. I'm organizing director on the campaign. Thank you so much for joining us on Soul of the Nation Saturday. We've seen actions big and small taken all across the country, and I want to thank you for taking action and joining us. I wanted to take a minute to share the many ways that you can get involved in the campaign and to support your community moving forward. Right now, we're focused on connecting to all of our supporters, checking in with them and seeing how they're doing, and also making sure that they're able to get plugged into the campaign if they're willing and able. So we're asking folks to do a few things. First, host a virtual event with friends, neighbors, and family to see how they can get involved in the campaign. If it is your first time hosting event, we're here to help facilitate and train. We have amazing organizers all across the country that are ready to assist. Second of all, we are also making calls to known supporters to check in on them and to make sure they know what's going on in the campaign and how they can get involved. We have a lot of folks to talk to, so we definitely could use your support. You can go to joebiden.com/organize now to take one of these actions and see many of the other actions you can help take with the campaign. Lastly, I wanted to plug that on Sunday, tomorrow, we'll be hosting our very first digital summit, where we'll be talking about online community engagement and how we can spread Joe's message through online organizing. To learn more and RSVP, you can go to joebiden.com/summit. So thank you for joining us tonight and enjoy the rest of the program.
America's best is coming out as America faces its worst.
Más a punto camminare al buio.
Think of the people around the world who open their windows or stand on their balconies and salute and cheer and clap.
The Lincoln family is jumping into action to do a random act of kindness for Lincoln's elderly.
Several grateful people have come to get free hand sanitizer and toilet paper.
Musicians have set up washing stations to protect the homeless.
Melbourne's Sikh community rallying to prepare meals for delivery to anyone most in need.
People cannot go to the gym, but it doesn't mean they can't get a workout.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Billy Porter.
I stand before you today as a post-civil rights movement baby. I stand before you today as the shining product of a government that cared about its people. And while the American democracy experiment is far from perfect, there was a time when we were on track to holding our truths that are now and have always been self-evident, that all men are created equal. Now let me just frame these words for our millennial context. That means all human beings are created equal, even the ones we may not personally understand. I am an artist. This is how I communicate. And as I look at the deterioration and dismantling of all the work we've done to achieve this idea so simply laid out in our Constitution, I'm reminded of the music from my childhood. As a young man, I was always drawn to the protest music that came out of the American unrest of the 60s and 70s that spoke truth to power then and still resonates today. And as I look out on the landscape of the American people, I'm reminded of the wise words of abolitionist Frederick Douglass when he told us that eternal vigilance is the price of liberty. I chose this song because I wanted to remind the world through this classic tune originally written by Stephen Stills and performed by the amazing band Buffalo Springfield all the way back in 1967, that it's time for we the people to be vigilantes and rise up. We have the power and it starts with our vote. It is time once again to demand change, and this time, change for good. I'm so honored to be premiering this video for what it's worth here on this platform as part of this great event. Here it is. I hope you all enjoy and are inspired to get out and make a difference. Thank you.
There's something happening here. It ain't exactly clear. There's a man with a gun over there telling me I got to beware. I think it's time we stop. Children, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going down. There's battle lines being drawn. Nobody's right if everybody's wrong. Young people speaking their minds, getting so much resistance from behind. We gotta stop. Children, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going down. What a field day for the heat. 1,000 people in the street, singing songs and carrying signs. Mostly say, hooray for our side. It's time we stop. Children, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going down. Down, 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 down. Paranoia strikes deep into your life. It will creep. It starts when you're always afraid. You step out of line, the man come and take you away. We better stop. Children, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going down. Stop. Hey, look around. Everybody knows what's going down. Stop. Hey, look around. Everybody knows what's going down. Down, down,
Good evening. I'm Malin Mitchell, a proud firefighter here in the city of Madison, Wisconsin for 24 plus years. I'm also proud to be part of a family of service. My older brother's a firefighter in Atlanta, Georgia, and my younger brother's a firefighter in St. Paul, Minnesota. You know, as firefighters and first responders, we respond to our community a lot of times on the worst days of their lives. And when people are at their worst, we have to be at our best. Today, firefighters all across this great country are going to work on the front lines when most people are encouraged to stay at home. In the fire service, we have a mantra. It's called all hands working, which simply means that everyone on location, every firefighter or first responder on scene is doing something to make their community better. They're working on that scene to make it right for our community. This is an unprecedented crisis that we're currently living in. And we need to be there for each other. We need all hands working. And we also deserve a president who stands with us, who understands the pain and fear that we are all experiencing, who fights for us and our families. That's simple for me. That's Joe Biden. And I stand with Joe Biden because he has always stood with us as firefighters and first responders. That's why I'm proud to not only introduce our next president of the United States, Joe Biden, but also the next First Lady of the United States, a community college professor, a Blue Star mom, a grandma, our friend, Dr. Jill Biden.
A year ago today, I was on my way to work at Northern Virginia Community College, thinking about my lesson. I put the car into park and started out from my classroom when an idea struck me and stopped me in my tracks. Wait, my husband just announced that he was running for president of the United States. Then I did the only thing I could do in such a surreal moment. I went to work. Since that day, I have traveled to hundreds of cities and towns. I've met farmers in the most rural parts of Iowa, young tech entrepreneurs, women saving lives at domestic violence shelters, pastors leading their flocks through uncertain times, and many, many of my fellow educators across the country. I've heard stories of heartbreak and heroism. I've seen how ready we are for change, for Joe's strong leadership, but most of all, from the Everglades of Florida to the churches of South Carolina, from the wetlands of New Hampshire to the shores of California, I've seen the heart of this nation. And though it's been tested and tried division, it still beats with generosity, kindness, and courage. That's the nation we're fighting for. So thank you, America, for an amazing year. Thank you for welcoming me into your community centers and churches and classrooms. Thank you for trusting us with your stories. South Carolina gave us wings. Super Tuesday lifted us up, but you make us fly. And together, we're just getting started. This moment reminds us that the presidency is about true leadership, having the forethought to prepare for the worst, the backbone to lead through chaos, the character to move beyond politics and serve every American, no matter where they live or what they believe. Only one candidate in this election has all three. My husband, our next president of the United States, Joe Biden. Joe?
Thank you, babe. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Well, good evening, everyone. And thanks so much for turning to look at us and tuning in this evening for our Soul the Nation Saturday. I hope you and all your families are safe and healthy tonight, but I know that so many Americans are not. And my prayers are with those who are sick and suffering and struggling just to get by because of this pandemic. You know, 1 year ago, Jill and I launched this campaign with a simple message. We were in the battle for the soul of this nation. Donald Trump is a threat to our most cherished American values, our most basic democratic beliefs, and to the very character of this country. If we give him 4 more years in the White House, he will forever and fundamentally alter the fabric of this nation. And while the world today is different in many ways, the truth hasn't changed. In fact, this crisis has shown it to be more true and shown us that this fight is more important than ever. You know, rather than leading this country with urgency and taking responsibility for our response to COVID-19, we're seeing more of the same from Donald Trump. Deflections, distractions, delays, and a dangerous refusal to listen to the scientists and heed the advice of the experts. And in the next week, in which the confirmed death toll for Americans has surpassed, and it'll be larger than this, but last week it surpassed 50,000. 50,000. More than 26 million Americans have filed for unemployment since the crisis started. And we've yet to hear the president say anything resembling a true expression of empathy for the pain, the suffering that so many of you across this nation are experiencing. Every single one of those lives is an American story cut short. They deserve to be remembered. They deserve to be honored. And their families deserve our support. You know, I believe it's the job of the president to provide leadership and reassurance when the nation is hurting. But during this crisis, we've also seen something else. We've seen that soul of America that I've been talking about begin to shine through. We've seen doctors and nurses, EMTs, other healthcare providers selflessly put themselves on the line to fight this virus and protect our communities. We've seen our grocery store workers and our delivery drivers and our public transit workers, too often our lowest workers, proudly carry this country on their backs as we adjust to the requirements of social distancing. We've seen Americans step up for one another in many meaningful ways, picking up groceries for their vulnerable neighbors, reaching out with video calls to check on a friend who might be having a hard time. All across the country, we've seen the outpouring of gratitude for our care providers as communities come together to clap and celebrate their work. You know, that's who we are. That's who we are as Americans. We're big-hearted, we're selfless, ready to rise to any challenge, capable of overcoming any threat. There's no quit in America. We're ready to prove to anyone who dares doubt it, we're still the nation. We're still the nation envisioned by Washington. We're still the nation bound together by Lincoln. We're still the nation lifted up by Roosevelt. And we're still the nation inspired by Kennedy. And we're still the nation that Barack Obama proved bent towards justice. We are one America. And if we can come together in this crisis, I know we can unite and do so much more. Because after this, we're going to have a great deal of very hard work to do, harder than ever, not just to rebuild our country, but to transform it, to make the investments we've needed to make for so long in our workers, to create a more just and inclusive economy where everyone has an opportunity to build a better life for their families, to make sure everyone in this country earns a living wage and is treated with dignity and respect. That's why we wanted to celebrate our 1-year anniversary by turning our campaign to a day of community service, a day to show our appreciation for our heroes, to show the country what this movement is all about. Maybe you hung out a sign in your window thanking our healthcare workers. Maybe you reached out to a neighbor you might otherwise have not spoken to, but thank them and tell them that, see if they need just a call. Find out what they're doing and how they're doing it. Maybe you wrote a letter or posted a video on social media to thank our frontline workers who are keeping us safe. Today is about showing the heart and soul of this country and the values that are powering us every day. Unity, compassion, empathy, and respect for the dignity of every single person. You know, this has been an unbelievable year in so many ways. We've faced adversity, we've overcome challenges, we've enjoyed hard-earned, gratifying moments, and we've come together, united and strong. I want to thank all of you who've been with me from the very beginning who believed in this campaign, and so many of you put your sweat and tears into getting us through the hardest parts, the longest days. All the difference. But I also want to send a thanks to all of you who may have supported a different candidate in the primary. Wanted to thank you for your passion, for joining our energies with us, creating more energy in our campaign. We not only welcome you, we need you. And I'm so honored, so genuinely moved by the faith that you have placed in me. Because even though we're separated from one another physically, and during difficult times, we're growing stronger every single day. We've always known at the end of the primaries, this would be one team, one fight. And looking at our incredible team and all the incredible talent we've got working together, I know we can and will defeat Donald Trump and reclaim the soul of America for a long time. So thank you all for taking your part, fulfilling your part, being part of the Soul Nation Saturday. Thank you for tuning in tonight, and thank all the folks you heard from earlier in the beginning of this event. I hope it's helped all of us hold on to the knowledge that even though we're far apart, we're all in this together, and you are not alone. You are part of something bigger than any one of us. You belong to a community and a country that cannot be broken. Not by this pandemic, not by anything, not as long as we stand united. Americans are tough, we're resilient, we're resourceful. So we may very well now be down, but we're not out. We're going to get through this. And we can come out the other side stronger than before, because there's nothing that we cannot accomplish if we work together. And come this November, we're going to prove it. So thank you all for being part of this movement, and God bless you. My heart goes out to all of you who've suffered a loss. God bless you all. Thank you.
Who are we? We are the ones who step up for each other. I've got your back. You've got mine. Kindness, humility, empathy. It's not just talk. It's who we are. It's who we always have been. And no one can take that from us. The movement to bring it back, it started here. And here. And here. In school gymnasiums, community centers, the living room down the block. You'll be where? Okay, we'll be there. Who are we? We're the movement that will beat Donald Trump. Welcome. We're going to have to sweat for it. We're going to have to sacrifice and fight. We're going to have to lead. Everyone is going to have to lead with kindness, humility, empathy, and not just talk, but action. Action today, action tomorrow. Action until we win. And we will win if we do this together. It's who we are. It's who we always have been. Now let's show them.